All right, thanks. Hello, I'm Jagadish, Venkataraman with UnitedHealth. I lead ML platform engineering for the enterprise. You will hear about the platform a little bit in our talk today, and I also have a couple of applied science teams working on healthcare AI use cases. Neeraj.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Neeraj. I lead healthcare client relationship at Fractal and advise different healthcare leaders on AI innovation and scaling. Glad to be here.
Thanks. Yeah, so we're going to focus on AI upskilling, and essentially it's a three-way collaboration between United, Fractal, and Databricks, as you will see in the talk. So let's go dive in. All right. So AI, like you all know, is very much here, especially in the last 2-3 years, right? Literally touching all facets of life. So for me, again, I truly and strongly believe that the real potential of AI is going to be realized when health outcomes become better due to AI, and the healthcare system overall starts working better for everyone when we start tapping into the potential. And really that aligns well with the tagline for United that you see here, helping people live healthier lives and helping make the health system work better for everyone, right? So that's really what we are striving to do as a company. And so just to sort of set the stage, so United, as both a payer and provider, touches over 148 million lives within the US. And in this day and age, that by definition also means we have multi-year longitudinal, multimodal data across all of these patients from various different engagements. And you see some of those buckets kind of being called out here. So you have engagement from the patients. They could be interacting with the MyUHC app. They could be searching. They could be calling customer service advocates with benefits questions. So there's voice data, there's search data. Then you have data in the form of prescriptions and labs, which is very much structured longitudinal data every time they make a visit to these clinics. And then there's tons of unstructured notes data in the form of like encounter notes. It could be discharge summaries. It could be some clinical summaries that the clinicians are creating, and also lots of like policy documents, standard operating procedures, and so on, right? So there's tons of unstructured data, all of that. But then the real power is not just in the vastness of the data, but truly in the potential to be able to leverage it and make it come to life to make things better. Again, I'm calling out some of the use cases here if you broadly kind of bucket it into care and consumer, if you will. So on the care side, you could be looking at how do you prevent hospital readmission, sort of early intervention for patients, and how do you bring them in before sort of a severe attack comes in. Or if you have a care gap in the form of like, somebody needs to get a flu shot or a vaccine shot, and there are other programs where there could be a spike in glucose level coming up where there could be an early intervention from a care provider. So how do you sort of leverage data to make those early interventions for the patient? On the consumer side, again, like I mentioned, there are still millions of phone calls being made every year by members calling in to understand which provider is in network, what is covered, like what is the dependent coverage looking like, where should they go for a certain specialty. Again, tons of these information that are lodged in long PDF files that people are sort of scrolling up and down to figure out the answers. And then again, on the search side, again, on the MyUHC app, people are going and they want to be able to go and ask very simple questions like, hey, I have this health issue and I am in this geography, like where should I be looking? And the answer should be completely contextualized to their plan and their sort of deductible and things like that. That's in their plan document, right? And then last, but certainly not the least, just operational automation, right? Like you can imagine, healthcare is just riddled with administrative burden from the moment like a patient walks into a clinic to the time like care is delivered and like a claim is settled. So everything from all the different faxes that are being sent to like notes and summaries that are being generated, there's like huge opportunity to be sort of organically able to reimagine the healthcare system, right? And all of this, as you see at the footnote here, I'm going to talk about that in a little bit more detail in a later slide. We want to make sure that everything that is being developed from an AI standpoint is sort of done in compliance with our internal group called the Responsible Use of AI group, which is a diverse set of clinicians, legal, compliance, and security team members who are sort of reviewing these use cases for like what population is impacted, how are you sort of defining accuracy numbers, how are you testing for bias, fairness, and so on. We'll get into a little bit of that in a later slide. With that, I will transition to Neeraj to talk about how Fractal is sort of stepping into this whole journey.
Thanks, Jagadish. So before I start, all this, using this data and AI, Jagadish, what do you think the biggest challenges that you have had in the last few years when you started this whole AI journey, right? So what do you think to experiment, to pilot, to scale, and on that spectrum, what kind of challenges that you faced?
Yeah, so I would say, already, companies like health tech companies specifically suffer from inorganic tech stacks, I would say. There are a lot of mergers and acquisitions that happen, and teams kind of have their own way of developing, models and solutions. So even more so exaggerated in this AI age, where literally every other week there is a new model coming out, a new framework coming out, a new way of doing things, and agentic systems coming in. So really for us, to just provide that clarity to teams as to how exactly we should go about standardizing the use of some of these tools, what to use where, what makes sense, how do you kind of sort of be skeptical about what's coming out, at the same time sort of move fast and be able to sort of go from experimentation to production, right? So that is lacking. And the whole point of this upskilling exercise is to sort of be able to give them that clarity so they understand what tools are out there.
Got it. Thank you. So that's something which I would like to highlight. That Bain did a survey with a vast majority of executive leaders, and the number one hindrance that 44% of those executives said is lack of in-house expertise. That is really stopping them or slowing them down, that what they want to achieve, what they see the potential of AI that can be done on their own businesses, but they're not able to do because of the in-house expertise that they lacked. So that's almost half of that executive saying that. So in that context, and that's where we'll talk about what we are able to do with UHG, but just looking at upskilling, what business values it can provide you is multifolds. So the very first thing is you can try to find the talent outside, or that also is challenging, but when you get the new talent, they don't know what your organization does, and bringing them, onboarding, and all that takes time to get all the knowledge that your particular business needs. So if you're able to upskill the current team, you're able to retain the knowledge that you have within the organization. They are working on different tool sets or different technology, but now you're able to use their knowledge, which is very specific to your organization, and then you give them the tools and skills that's required for AI scaling. So that's one. You also unlock the productivity gains by getting, now the tools are there, even if you are doing engineering work, there is an AI component that will make you productive. It can write your own code, you can further improve on it, but it will make you productive, but you need to know how to use those, right? So that's the second part of it. It certainly is a lot more cost effective. We'll see what the initial gains that UHG has that we have for this particular program, but it's a lot more cost effective to either hire or take the talent, get those trained in market versus trying to do it yourself, right? So that is a lot more cost effective. And last piece is, which as a partner, I would like to have a lot more partnership with all of you, but from your perspective, or UHG's perspective, all of you clients, it reduces the dependence on the partners because you control your own destiny. Partner ecosystem is important. You will definitely need that for scaling. But if you're able to do that upskilling yourself, you reduce the dependence and you can control your own destiny. So these are kind of key business drivers that really allow why that upskilling can help you in different ways. So with that intent in mind, Fractal and UHG joined forces, and I'll tell you a little bit about Fractal before getting into what we did together. So Fractal is an AI-first company. We are in 25 years now. We started before AI was AI. And we have been doing a lot of research. We're very research focused. We invest almost 7 to 8% of our revenue going back on research. So there are things, what we see now on LLMs, we were able to do before even ChatGPT moment. We were including those in our own products. We are seeing ahead of the curve. There are path-making research that we do and present in a lot of different conferences, world-renowned, and present that research and bring that to our clients. And we bring that to clients as our solutions, as well as some things that we make available just as an open source. So what you see, Vedya is one of our medical model that we made available primarily for Indian market, where the access to care is not readily available, or there are not too many clinicians available. So you can upload all your clinical data or ask questions, like it's like medical GPT, which is free for all, that we have made available. Or we have this research going into the commercialization. So some products like Cogentic that you see here, it's our agentic platform that allows you to do all these multi-agents that you bring for your business processes, automate your processes for either automation or just assistance, kind of co-pilot, which is very purpose-built for your own specific business. So that combined research, which is made available either for commercialization for all the clients or even for general public, is what we do. The way we look at it, to get the results, particularly in this age of AI is just one part of it. The way we look at it is, if you look at the first equation on the results, it's a function of AI, but what needs to happen on engineering to make that AI work, all the plumbing that needs to happen, getting the data, what all components that you need from different systems. So that's why you see the engineering is squared, because that's how the weightage of engineering is. The third component that we do, which generally is overseen or not given as importance as it should, is the design part of it, how you look at the adoption. You build a system and clinicians say, are you telling me how to do my job? No. You bring them on upfront. You design a system that has the adoption because you have worked through them. So how you build a system which is human-centric design and all those aspects of design, if you don't do that mindfully, the adoption and the efficacy of these systems are not going to be as much as you would like to see. So that's kind of the first equation that you see here, how we go about getting the results for our clients. The second equation that you see here is how to make it effective within an organization. And talent is one part. The upskilling that we are talking about today is one component of it. The whole governance, and Jagadish will cover about how UHG has a robust governance process, be it data governance, AI governance, a reviews board, and all that. So we do that. So out of these equations, there are 5 pieces, 3 on top, 3 here. We cover 5 pieces as Fractal. One thing that we lean heavily and advise clients and organizations to do is the culture, because that is very specific to you. Your individual organization has the culture that is going to be very essential to make it effective. And that's what we say it is, be it change management, be it the mindset and how you encourage people, energizing the business, and all that is part of the culture. You bring that in, that's how it makes it effective. So to that effect, Jagadish, how UHG looks at AI and broadly the innovation, what kind of culture you have? I'd like to just pick your brain on that.
Sure, yeah. I think a couple of cultural aspects that we can sort of highlight, right? So one is really what we are talking about today in terms of upskilling and having people sort of think of AI as a companion, if you will. Like that's kind of where it's going, whether you're in software development or whether you're in product management, where not. So just trying to sort of have that AI first mindset, both to be relevant and to be sort of more productive, right? And then the second one really, I think, is about reuse. And that's something we are emphasizing a lot within the organization. Again, for an enterprise our size, you can imagine there are multiple tech pockets and teams that are sort of aligned with various lines of businesses building their own thing. So how do you essentially create a central, searchable, reusable repository where people are coming in and sort of being able to effectively leverage what has already been built and then just build the last mile rather than solve everything from scratch again and again, right? And for that, once again, like a standardized framework becomes crucial so that everybody's kind of building on the same tech stack. Otherwise, like things just don't plug in, right? So that's kind of where we are.
Makes sense. Thank you. Okay, so when we started on this scale and having the conversation at UHG scale, thousands of people, how you balance the personalization that you want to make it as effective as possible while doing it at scale. We can do it, this kind of room, even this 100 plus people, 200, it's hard to get that effective in a classroom setting. And you make it virtual, it even becomes less effective. So how you make it more effective and doing it at scale at what UHG needs. So there were different kind of challenges. One size does not fit all. We have different level of skills and different personas, some software engineers to some junior data scientists or some ML engineers, what we are trying to achieve with different kind of skills. So there are different personas we need to really look at who we are targeting and how we balance that out. The second piece was even on their own journeys, each individual's skill set is different or skill level is different. We are not starting at here or here. It's a spectrum. So how we cater to that kind of cohort, which is very varied in their skill levels as well. And then also, the world does not stop. Our business commitments, they are what they are. So we need to do this in this quarter by this year end. All these business projects, those are already committed, and business is counting on the technical team to deliver those. Where is the time? So you say, okay, let's get all these thousands of people and put it in classroom and say, okay, you're going to be now Gen AI experts, great, but what happens to the business projects? Those we already committed, right? So meeting those commitments and is still able to do that, it's just like just changing the wheel while car is running, right? So those are the key things that we had considerations on when we are designing a program like this, which we are being very practical about, making it effective, as well as considering what is happening today. We are not jeopardizing that. So Fractal Analytics Academy, our approach is that it's best to learn with experience. So there are a lot of different courses out there. There are a lot of content. There is no end to what you are able to find. But what we really try to do is, our approach is 3 C's. Jagadish talked about 2 C's. So my competitive spirit came in and I said, okay, I need to top it up with 3 C's. So the 3 C's we have is, we make it very contextualized. So anything that you are learning, you want to make sure that it is for your specific industry, for your specific business. If you're talking about within payers, you have Medicare, government programs, or commercial, whatnot, there are nuances. Or if there are functions where somebody is helping the clinical team versus enrollment team versus provider or claims. So there is a context to what kind of programs you are going to help business with, and that's where you're going to build those models, be it traditional AI or Gen AI, right? So their context is very important, so that's one thing that we really emphasize on. The second C that we look at is how you look at the connections of different systems from data perspective, as well as how different points come in when you build a system. If you're looking at it from the point of view of, I need to build a system or an ML model that does, let's say, identify what my proactive outreach should be, or who I should be look at, like hospital readmission that you're talking about, Jagadish, right? So there were different components that you are going to make connection on, rather than a linear. You need to find out the connects or dots and say, okay, this is how I learn to solve a problem. It is not just a linear thing that I can solve it. And the last piece is this, not only the technology is new, but how to solve business problems, you need to be creative. It is not that something is solved before. There are novel problems. With these technologies, how you make the best use of it, you need to be creative problem solver. You need to learn that this is how I'm going to apply these technologies to solve the problem. So bringing that creativity. So this is what we focus on, that how build a program, build content to keep these things in mind, which makes it a lot more effective for a learner to be project ready. The end goal is that whenever, and Jagadish will talk about some of the things that we are doing on, once somebody goes through this program, the idea is not to just get a certificate that, oh, I'm Gen AI certified. How that person is able to effectively work on a project immediately after finishing that curriculum. That's the whole intent, to make them project ready. And by doing all this contextualization and problem solving, we are able to make them product ready, which Jagadish is going to talk about.
All right, thanks, Neeraj. So yeah, so everything, just building on whatever Neeraj just said, we essentially have our internal program we are calling AI Dojo. So in collaboration with our Optum Tech University, our internal learning management system that we have, and Fractal that Neeraj talked about. So really the goal is to create course content for beginner level people all the way up to the advanced people, essentially giving them sort of basics of data transformations all the way to like how do you go about creating models and how do you start leveraging the Gen AI tools that are out there, right? So we have over 120 hours of course content that we jointly created with Fractal, highly contextualized. I'll get to that in a minute. And we have over 20,000 engineering talent across the enterprise globally, like working on all kinds of like digital tools to AI modeling and so on. And we already have 15,000 plus of them already enrolled in the course and sort of waiting to sort of go through it. And we have at least a couple of different basic pathways that we begin with. You have the Gen AI pathway, and then you have the classic machine learning pathway. So you can guess which one people are choosing. And then there's the advanced AI track, where essentially people who have already sort of dabbled in a bit of AI and want to sort of focus more on like advanced retrieval patterns or like graph techniques or fine-tuning a small language model, things of that nature. So essentially you have like curated course content for like the advanced path as well, right? So that you essentially graduate with specific capstone projects on each of these. So yeah, so just to sort of reinforce some of that. So it's not about just coming in and being presented with a dummy data set of like iris flower petals or something like that and walking away thinking that, hey, I know how to do AI. So it's really about how do you sort of get data sets that are very relevant, whether it's like mimic discharge summaries or diabetes data sets and things of that nature, where you develop an intuition for the data and at the same time you know what techniques to throw at it and how are you able to sort of complete the exercises and walk away, right? So it's highly contextualized content. Maybe, I don't know, Neeraj, if you want to say something about what kind of data sets, maybe a couple of examples that you picked.
Sure. So again, on contextualization, what we built different hands-on exercises. So as they are going through, so even those three pathways that they showed on Gen AI, there are 4 or 5 different courses as they graduate from one to another. There are hands-on exercises, and we look at, let's say, look at the clinical data set, or this is a claim data set. So we have those contextualized data sets for those hands-on exercises. on top of it, once you are done with those pathways that is required for you to get to the certification and be project ready, there's a capstone project at the end, which depending on the function you are coming from. So if you, again, you're going to support the clinician versus claims versus member experience, those data sets, which is very specific to UHG and very specific to that function, is what is being used in the capstone project. So when you are coming, you are getting the real life experience that when you're working on a business project for that particular function, you will encounter the same set of data elements and different kind of tables that you are going to join, that I'm looking at the claims versus member versus provider, or these files, those are coming from provider and third party. If it's Gen AI and unstructured data, here are the clinical labs. So all those things, we make it as real as possible and contextualized to that particular function, which is not only just UHG specific, but within UHG, there are RX, and there are all sorts of businesses, right? So from RX to all the UHC, the insurance side of the business. Within insurance, you have all these different sub-segments. So that's the kind of contextualization to the level which allows these learners to relate because they are already in that function, and also use that data sets to solve the problems what we want them to learn.
Makes sense. Thanks. Yeah, and then so once you have the data piece sorted out, it's really about what support you can offer to the learners as they go through the process in the form of office hours or community groups or Teams channels or whatnot, right? And then most importantly, we make sure that all this course is sort of complemented from video content that people are looking at on the sort of SLM to hands-on exercises that they actually are able to work on in this United AI Studio platform that I'm going to talk about, so that they know once they graduate exactly how to go about sort of creating their new project from scratch. So on the right, again, all of this is completely intertwined. So in terms, as you can imagine, we deal with sensitive data all the time. So really understanding at an enterprise level how to deal with PHI, what are the policies in place, how do you think about data use rights and governance is kind of ingrained in the platform itself. And then that's where the responsible and ethical use comes in as well. So when the model is ready to eventually go to production, you kind of go in front of this group. I'll talk about that in a minute. And then again, all of this is hosted on this enterprise platform, which also, again, I'll dive in a little bit.
So I'll just add on there, just to be clear, that all of this and where the office hour and community comes into play, what I mentioned, that we want it to be a self-learning experience. So all the content is available. It's on self-paced, you learn. But if, depending on your skills, what you're finding challenging and whatnot, that's where the office hour personalization comes in. So that's the kind of marriage of scale and personalization, that it's self-learning on your own pace, which we believe is the right content for different skills. But you're not alone. Wherever you are stuck, there is a support system that is personalized, and one-on-one you can get that support. That's where that scale and personalization marriage happens.
Yeah. All right, so again, Sam, just want to do a little bit of a deep dive into what is this platform that I've been alluding to, right? Again, internally, we are calling it United AI Studio. So really, started out a couple of years ago more as end-to-end ML lifecycle enablement for teams looking to come in, connect to internal proprietary data sets and go end-to-end to deployment, right? But now it's obviously evolving into also an agentic framework where you have MCP clients and servers sitting in, and data sources talking to one another and so on. So that's the natural evolution for this. So really, if you look all the way at the left, right, I think it's again, given the number of different lines of businesses that are there across the enterprise, it is very important for teams to have clarity in billing right up. Okay, what project am I working on? What am I funded for? Do I have the billing transparency in in what resources I am using and storage I'm using? So right from the outset, they have the ability to bring in their own Azure subscription or GCP subscription and create the project right there. So we intend for this to be a thin layer on top of the cloud service providers. We are not trying to reinvent the wheel and sort of create the services that already exist, but really the goal is to be multi-cloud so that there is not a vendor lock-in, and especially given the pace at which LLMs are evolving, we want teams to be able to experiment with the Geminis or the GPT 4.1s or whatnot, right? So we want that capability. And so they're able to come in and choose where they want to bring their subscription, go in. And then, as you can imagine, for data can be on Databricks, S3 buckets, GCP buckets, whatnot. So to be able to sort of offer them sort of a slew of data connectors right there with data governance in place, so that the attestation process is there, so that they can then go do the appropriate training and get the data to flow. So at that point is where they start sort of experimenting and preparing the data, going through ETL pipelines, transforming the data, and then start experimentation. So this is again spinning up compute, and that's where Databricks comes in, especially at scale, but being able to sort of spin up compute and sort of create a Databricks workspace, run your experiments, and at whichever point they think that this model is ready for prime time, so that is where they are sort of, the platform is natively integrated into this AI review board that I mentioned. And that AI review board essentially is, again, a team of clinicians, legal compliance people. And we are, United is a member of CHAI, which is a Coalition for Health AI. So that is a conglomeration of academic and industry partners who are all trying to collectively figure out what are the right metrics to be looking at. So if you're looking at like a clinical notes summarization model or like a medical question answering model, well, I mean, there are obviously benchmarks being set by like the big players out there, but how much of what they are showing you on the public data sets actually translates to proprietary data sets, and which of those metrics actually is relevant for your specific use case. So those model scorecards are coming out of the CHAI work group discussions and figuring out what is the definition of bias, fairness, hallucination, toxicity, all of those metrics for the relevant population that is being impacted. It's all of that plays a crucial role. So when you think when the teams think rather that the model is ready for prime time, they go hit the submit for review button, and that triggers like a live review with this panel that I just described, right? So that's when they go present the results, and once this group blesses it and basically says, okay, you can go live, that is when the platform allows them to even deploy the model as an endpoint, right? And then it becomes exposed as an endpoint. You can integrate into a clinician workflow, into a nurse workflow, into like a customer advocate workflow, whatever it is, right? So that is the end-to-end life cycle. And as you can imagine now, this is sort of evolving into orchestrated systems of not just point solutions, but multiple solutions strung together in agentic fashion, right? So that's kind of where this is headed next. And again, just to bring that all together, again, as a platform customer, there are multiple things the users could be doing. And so we naturally sort of enable multi-cloud playgrounds where teams are again able to come in and sort of look at the latest and greatest models out there. It could be Notebook LM, it could be like Gemini Flash or whatever it is, and they're able to come in and sort of experiment with it. And then this reusable catalog that I mentioned when talking about culture. So really creating a framework where teams that have taken models to production feel comfortable that this is a component that others across the enterprise can actually reuse. So we give them a method to sort of a framework to go and publish this to the catalog, so that, and then attach metadata to it, so that like a planning agent can understand the tool, or some other team that wants to use the component can understand it, and so on. So just creating that whole catalog. And then obviously the UAIS projects that I spoke about, right? So the other thing that is that we are working on, again, once again with in collaboration with Fractal, is this notion of an AI gateway. So everything that especially from an LLM standpoint or a third-party service standpoint, everything that is leaving our system and sort of going to a cloud provider, we want to make sure that there is complete transparency and monitoring and observability in terms of like what activity is going on, and also from a cost and capacity optimization standpoint, right? So you can imagine like Azure, for example, offers what are called like provisioned throughput units. So this is essentially like dedicated capacity to like the GPT models, right? But then it's a use it or lose it kind of scenario where if you're not hitting that API all the time, you're still getting charged for it. This is like a dedicated capacity. But then if you go the pay-as-you-go route, essentially you run into SLA issues and you run into like latency issues. It's a best effort, right? So now teams are trying to trade off between best effort and dedicated capacity. So they are kind of caught in the middle where they don't necessarily have enough traffic to like buy an entire PTU, but at the same time they don't want to be stuck with like unknown latencies and so on, right? So this is where an AI gateway comes in, where essentially we as a platform take ownership of capacity optimization and essentially say, we will pull together 2, 3, 5, how many of our applications make sense and kind of make them integral multiples of the PTUs that we can purchase. So it's completely transparent to the teams as to how the PTU is being used, and they have full billing transparency in terms of like how this is actually sort of being charged to their accounts, right? So again, all of this is sort of, again, once again, in collaboration with Fractal, building out the LLM gateway and the way it is hosted in the platform. So where does Databricks, again, truly come in? So apart from teams experimenting with Databricks workspaces once they are within United AI Studio, there is also, especially for this AI Dojo program in particular, we want users to come in and just focus on the course content. So we don't want them to be coming in and worrying about what service to provision, spinning up compute, clusters, and being delayed by VMs being spun up and so on, right? So essentially, the serverless offering from Databricks was a magic bullet for this whole thing, where you could potentially have hundreds, if not thousands, of users coming in parallel and being able to sort of, especially if they're training, fine-tuning an SLM or like training an XGBoost model and things of that nature, really being able to sort of scale up capacity as needed, for their needs across thousands of users, right? So really, there is also role-based access control just ingrained in there, so we know exactly who has access to what. And at the same time, there is very minimal sort of administrative effort in trying to maintain, or rather submitting tickets or like, spinning up clusters and so on. Honestly, the scale at which we are doing this, it also becomes a great template for a lot of the hackathons that kind of happen across the enterprise in smaller scale. But then this is like a very sort of easy one to replicate for like, 50 users or 100 users, where they have like a very targeted approach to go do it. So lastly, I just want to maybe touch on, Dojo really is at the intersection of creating business value and like the outcomes of the program itself. So the goal really is for us to make sure that the internal talent is retained, number one, and two, it feels like they feel like they are getting the right upskilling that they need to sort of evolve with the evolving landscape, and also like how can we essentially scale to the AI use cases. Again, you can imagine hundreds of use cases across the enterprise, across various lines of businesses. And so for team, I don't think it's practical for us to just go out there and hire an entire new workforce to come in and sort of start doing this. So it's really the natural way to sort of get there is to make sure that the people that understand the system, who understand the data, have a natural progression towards using some of these AI tools that are out there and sort of make the best out of it, right? So really the way to scale to deployment for these use cases is through internal upskilling. And it's also like a great talent retention mechanism. And again, like Neeraj mentioned, it's compared to like an external certification at thousands of employees, this is like much smaller cost incurred to the enterprise to set something up internally and like upskill them. And we already have like very high learner engagement. Like I mentioned, we have over like 15,000 users, and then we are seeing much higher NPS scores. I'm told it's much higher than 70% right now based on the last couple of weeks. But really that is it. So I think that just the three-way collaboration between us, Fractal, and Databricks, primarily targeting the internal audience to sort of get them to that next level. We are starting with the developer persona. We are starting with the engineers who are comfortable coding and getting there. And then once we hit that, I think the next target would be like the non-developer persona, the clinicians and the product managers and others who will also benefit from this. But we are kind of starting with the people who are like hands-on coding. I think that is pretty much it. You want to end?
Yeah, I would just say as a next step, as Jagadish said, so these thousands of technical engineers and all those personas is the first target, which is deep upskilling. But United has 400,000 people, non-technical people, what we do with them, and they need to be AI aware. They don't need to have all this skill that is required to do hands-on work, but how they make best use of AI for productivity, or what tools are being given to them, how to best utilize that. So that's one part of it. We also started, and we are seeing that some leaders in industry, and United being one pioneer, which we started with their human capital team conversation on how to reimagine the roles of different functions, not just the upskilling, but completely reimagining how the roles will look like in AI world. So it's very early stages. We started to have brainstorm on how to reimagine the roles. Not a lot of organizations are thinking about it, but that's where United is going, and some of other clients, we are starting to have that conversation. The way we look at it is how many different parts of any individual role, those on a daily basis or yearly basis, what kind of components of that role is, and what we believe is going to be impacted by AI versus not. So the impacted by AI, which is completely eliminated or transformed or is still being required, like empathy and some of those creativity, teamwork. So which is going to be impacted, which is not, is where you will redesign the roles. Very early stages, but that's a kind of the next stage of this upskilling where the world is headed.
Yep. I agree. Yeah. So I think really, I mean, we're already seeing, like, with product management, for example, instead of having to write like business requirements documents from scratch, people are essentially being able to just do a brain dump into a document. Multiple people that are engaged in the project are just able to sort of come in and write out what they want to see. And then you're essentially LLMizing the whole thing and saying, create this with timelines and plans and risks and blockers and whatnot. And if something changes tomorrow, all you have to do is like go change a line of text in the raw text that you gave it, and everything else on your roadmap and everything just adjusts to it, right? So the whole, I think a lot of things are being reimagined. I think right from ticket submission to like peer programming, like Satya talked about at Build and so on. So I think a lot of things are evolving, and this is just the first step in the journey to sort of help the developer community catch up to what's going on, and then everything else, the end users who are most important. I think especially from a trust standpoint, we want the nurses and the clinicians to be able to trust what they're using and understand what they're using. So definitely that is like the next step we will sort of go towards. So with that, we'll wrap up.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.